Hello friends! With the Procreate 5.4 update, there are now even more incredible default brushes to choose from, and we're going to explore some of them. In this video, I'm going to test the Trevallyn brush. Before we get started, I did see the requests for me to review the new watercolor and gouache brushes. Don't worry, those will be coming soon. I got super excited when I saw the new pastel set, so I wanted to test at least one of these brushes as soon as possible. So to find the Trevallyn brush, open up the brush libraries, make sure you're in the new Procreate library, look for the pastels set, and Trevallyn is third on the list. I have not made any changes to this brush in the Brush Studio. I'll be using it exactly as it was installed, and I have my canvas set to 3000 pixels square at 300 dpi. If you're wondering why that matters, watch this linked video. First, we're going to take a look at the brush behaviors, and as usual, I'll start with a few stroke tests. This is a brush at about 2%. Then let's go to a medium size. And this is a brush at 100%. So at a really small size, the texture makes the brush stroke look really grainy. You get a much better representation of the texture at this medium size, and of course, even more so at the large size. You get that nice grain along the edges, and it does become a lot more dense toward the center. The brush does seem to have a very slight taper, which is most evident at this medium size. And there's a tiny bit of pressure sensitivity, but not much. Rather than the value shifting, the amount of grain seems to shift. So with light pressure, you're seeing a lot more grain, and it becomes much more dense with more pressure. Okay, I'm going to lay some color down so that I can do a quick swatch test. And you can't see through these color swatches, so it's clearly an opaque brush, which I would expect because pastels are an opaque medium. Let's see if there's any difference when I change my grip and use more of the side of the pencil. Not a huge difference. It's more grainy, which makes sense because when you have a loose grip like this, you're not applying much pressure. And as we just talked about, light pressure seems to allow the grain to come through more. So while some brushes get really transparent and kind of smoother when you use the side of the pencil, that's not really happening with this brush. Now let's see what the smudge tool does. I'm just going to long press on the smudge tool so it also switches to Trevallyn. And the first thing I notice is that by default, the opacity is set really low on the smudge tool version of this brush. So let's see how it works. Now, usually when the opacity is low like that, the smudging is very, very gradual. So it kind of takes a little bit more work to blend. But it does blend. I don't know if you can see it very well on camera, but it's actually holding some of the texture. You know, usually with the smudge tool, it will completely smooth out the grain of a texture brush. But surprisingly, it's actually maintaining some of that grain. So that's a pleasant surprise. Okay, let's take this brush for a spin. I'm going to draw a little potted plant. I already love how loose and sketchy it is at a small size. Even though this is a textured brush, it goes down so buttery smooth. I love that. Ooh, that texture is so good. I'm not putting much pressure on my pencil at all here, so I guess that's really helping all that texture to come through. Okay, now I'm going to start layering on a few different colors. I really like the look of using unexpected colors for shadows and highlights, and pastels are great for that. I'm adjusting the amount of pressure I use here so that some areas will look more textured while other areas are more smooth and creamy. Okay, let's see. I'm going to drop the brush size back down and go back to sketching mode while I work out the placement of the leaves. Then with the brush at a larger size, I can quickly fill these shapes with color. Again, I'm not pressing down too hard here because I want that texture to show. I'm going to do the same thing with the leaves and add a few different layers of colors for shading and highlights. All right, I'm going to reduce my brush size again, even smaller than before, and add the vein details on these leaves. Now, when I did the stroke test earlier, it looked like the brush was almost too grainy at a really small size, but this is actually working out pretty well. At this size, this brush kind of gives me a color pencil vibe. I think I'm going to change the background color and just add a little shadow. And I'm done. All right, my thoughts on this brush. I love it. The texture is amazing. It almost looks like you're using a textured paper background, which I really like. It was more versatile than I thought it would be. There was a great mix of grainy and smooth textures. It worked fairly well for sketching, and at a small size, it felt a little like working with colored pencils. I didn't do any smudging or blending because I didn't really feel like I needed it for this drawing, and I actually really like the look of the texture, so I didn't want to blend any of that away. Overall, this brush gave me many of the things I like about working with pastels: the vibrant color, a creamy application, and lots of flexibility for color and texture layering. I really enjoyed working with this brush. So tell me, what do you think of Trevallyn? Do you think you'll give this brush a try? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you'd like to see more from this brush review series, there's a link to the playlist in the description. Also, if you enjoyed this video, I'd love if you'd give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.